I mean, I always kind of loved tattoos. Like, to be totally honest, I actually used to tattoo my Barbies. So I did. Yeah.
That's
have
quite
like
a confession.
Oh, I have yes, I have memories of like giving my Barbies piercings and tattoos. I was just this little girl.
There's all kinds of levels of meaning to that, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So now later on, I started to be influenced by a lot of powerful, mainly Secwepemc women, but Indigenous people all over. I was really seeing that rise
Yeah.
within the last, gosh, I feel like a lot has happened in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of this, like this resurgence, and it's really powerful. So I was starting to really get influenced by this. And
so which do you want to tell us about first, the tattoos or the visit to your homeland? Because
well,
those are two biggies.
They are two biggies.
Yeah.
So maybe I should do tattoos first, because I actually got my tattoo first before I got to go to my homeland.
Idea, yeah.
So tattoos were made, I don't know if it was illegal, but they were really frowned upon, and then the practice was banned. So Inuit, yes.
And often if we can just get a little more detail, often it was like the missionary presence coming in, not understanding the different things, outline a lot of cultural things out of, fear and misunderstanding. And
well, they were there under the premise of saving.
Yes.
The word saving comes to mind. And they were there, yes, to disrupt this practice. They were there to interrupt us, what our families were doing.
Yes.
So it was done through multiple avenues.
It wasn't just tattoos. It was kind of a lot of cultural.
Yeah. So after the fur trade and then the Klondike Gold Rush, then there was this whaling period, and so at that time the whalers really disrupted Inuvialuit way of life.
Okay.
Yeah, they showed up with a whole different set of ethics, and they were just over whaling. They were killing everything, and Inuvialuit were like, "What are you doing? This is not how we are." Yeah. So but this influx of missionaries, Catholic missionaries, and then so the whalers, it was a rough time for Inuvialuit. So there were still facets of culture happening though, but then the missionaries discouraged this specific practice. It was really tied to women's identity, women's Inuit identity. Okay. And as we know, historically all over the world, women have experienced oppression from men. Yeah. So, and that was something to really disrupt this with Inuit. And so we had close ties with one another.
Let me unpack that a little bit. Is there connection to, if the tattoos are connected to a woman's strength and identity, removing the tattoo was part of that subjugation, particularly for women, because in the Inuit, the men weren't tattooing.
Not often.
It zeroed in on the women. Okay.
I think that the only men who would have received tattoos is if they were medicine.
Okay.
Yeah, or shamans. They would receive a tattoo right here. Yeah. But mostly women were primarily the ones who were getting tattoos. The men did get the piercings, the whalebone piercings right here. So that was probably also discouraged later on.
So that's just hitting me now, the significance of that. Because you told me that before. Yeah. That's the women, but I just put that together.
Yes. It's like policing Indigenous women's bodies, in a sense, right? So it was really disrupting this, and yes, it had meaning. They all have meanings about even your class. Inuvialuit did have at times an hierarchical sort of structure. So women, there were more important people than others sometimes. And where you were, if you were like ready to have a family, or how many children you had. So these were all things. If you were married, or these were all important levels of the way we structured ourselves. We didn't have matrilineal type clans or moieties, but we did have social organization. I just don't know the actual term, or if there was a term. So Inuit organized themselves more regionally. So we had 3 dialects under the blanket of Inuvialuktun, then you would really be recognized by where you're from, by which dialect you're speaking. And the same with the sort of tattoos you could tell who's the artist, who's doing this work, you know, who did you get your tattoo from? So this disruption in identity.
It wasn't just about face. It was about removing identity, removing strength, removing the ability to be recognized among your own people. Mm-hmm. So I'm starting to get that.
Yeah, it's
so they
profound.
were removed historically.
Yeah.
And then the path towards healing was part of yours, reclaiming
for a long time. Yes, I was always.
You started with your Barbies.
I started with my Barbies. Yes, it's so awesome because I actually, Inuk Barbie actually ended up back in my life again when Orion. When my oldest son, actually, we were at an Indigenous Peoples Day event and there was a prize table just for the kids. Well, Orion was the only child there, so she just said, she's like, just go ahead and pick a prize. And Orion could see how excited I was about Inuk Barbie. So anyways, he chose Inuk Barbie and she now has face tattoos. Good. Very culturally accurate face tattoos, actually.
Would you bring her as your next item?
Oh my God, yes, I will bring Inuk Barbie here. Yeah, so that started when I was young. I was doing piercings, tattoos on them. Later on, I from a young age, I was just attracted, but I didn't actually get my first tattoo until 2018. That seems so not long ago, actually. It was 2017 or 2018 when I got my first hand poke tattoo. So,
and where is it on your body?
So my first tattoo was actually on my forearm.
Okay.
So I was at Earthline Tattoo. So I saw this sort of call out for Indigenous peoples wanting to get tattoos. I had been following some profound artists for a while, and I understood about getting tattoos. You don't just walk into a parlor and get a tattoo. No, there's a deep meaning and exchange that happens between artist and the person receiving the tattoo. So I decided, I emailed them. They got back to me right away, immediately. And they said, okay, great. Come on in at this date. And I was like, just like that. Hey, there's no money involved with this event. This Earthline is curated by Indigenous tattoo artists. They oversee rising artists. So they're actually training them. So this was happening at the University of British Columbia.
Kind of promotional, sort of. Promoting the artists and connecting them with Indigenous people.
And actually being able to practice the craft. So some of these people, you could tell, have been tattooing already. Okay. And then others are just learning how. So they're learning their traditional styles, which is there's tap, hand poke, and skin stitch. Those were the sorts of things that I was seeing that day.
Yeah, and you've been showing us the difference on your arm. I wish that was...
So this is a profound moment for me. I come walking into the university. My girlfriend came with me to watch over because I was still nursing my youngest. So I walked into that room and I saw one Inuk girl. You could just recognize us. Like we have a different look about us sometimes. Okay. So right away, I'm like, there she is. We locked eyes right away, me and this girl. And I was like, there she is. That's the girl who's going to do my tattoo, because they were pairing. They were trying to pair. They were trying to get as close culturally as they could. Okay. Yeah. So these guys are great. Right. Earthline Tattoo Collective. So these guys know what they're doing. So right away I'm paired with this Inuk girl. Okay. And one thing that struck the room, I think I was at one of the first ones that happened. So what struck the room, I heard them talking about it, was the laughter, the amount of laughter. Okay. The women in the room were laughing, like you'd hear, it would be quiet. There's music, there was Indigenous music playing, and then all of a sudden you would hear this bursting laughter. If you ever hear a bunch of Native women laughing together, it is loud. Yeah. So, and that was something that they noticed. They're like, this isn't always just so serious. It was this beautiful. And so I met my friend to this day. We were messaging each other this morning. We've kept in touch. Okay. So this artist who did my first tattoo was done by hand poke. And I realized now, years later, that what I requested of her, and she didn't know either, none of us knew, but what I requested of her to tattoo me that day was actually a large thing to ask of her. And now we look back on it. It was, we were both naive. We didn't know.
Yeah. Why was it a big
it was actually 4 lines, and they were around a full limb. So so a full round 4 times, that's actually a lot, especially for a beginner artist.
So a lot for her to be tattooing, or a lot like a lot of significance?
Well, both, but a lot, I feel like spiritually on her end.
A lot to output.
But the artist is giving a great deal of themselves. And
you guys didn't know.
We just underestimated that. We were there for a really long time. We weren't the only ones.
How long?
There were some other big tattoos happening that day. Yeah, so we weren't the only ones, but other people were finishing up, and then we were realizing, like, gee, we still have a ways to go. So I feel like I was there for 7 or 8 hours. That's
intense.
That's a long session. I was nursing also. We had traveled there that day and had to travel back that evening. So maybe it was around 7 hours. So it was a long tattoo. So this was a hand poke, and she did a phenomenal job. And what a powerful experience that was. So it wasn't until a couple years down the road. I just want to mention that one of the artists who was overseeing, so like you would have a mentor. I imagine that Inuit would do this too. So you would have a mentor for a while, right? So that it's like anything, you have someone overseeing you to make sure you're doing things properly. So one of the mentors actually is the other person who has done my tattoos, and that felt great to me. So historically, women are the ones who give each other face tattoos. However, this mentor did give me my chin tattoo later on. So she was at the same event, but she was busy tattooing other people. So I actually went to her mentor, and because I trusted him so well, I'd seen his work. I trusted him to keep the line straight, because that was very important to me.
On your face.
Yes, because you're getting this tattoo. It's going to be on your face for life now. So I want to talk about that just for a minute, about my face tattoo, because it is by far the most significant tattoo that I have. However, I forget all the time that it's there. To me, it's just a part of my face. It's just a part of who I am.
Do people comment on it?
Yeah, I do get a lot of comments on it. I get asked questions about it, which I don't typically answer. If somebody asks me what it means, I'll just tell them that I don't have time to tell them that, which is the truth. And it's not really something you should ask someone like out of the gate.
That's like, good to know.
Maybe, ease into that one a bit, or don't ask at all. They might tell you if they want to tell you. So I've actually had to rehearse, because I got blindsided a few times when people asked me, and so I would sort of bumble. I would almost
tattoo etiquette. I'm now taking notes here.
So it's good, especially for facial tattoos. We're deeply connected to them, so they're done in ceremony.
So when you understand that the tattoo is done in ceremony, it would be different from me asking like a non-Indigenous person who's got, whatever. They'll just rattle on about, and this is from, so-and-so. But when you think of it as something done in ceremony, there's a reverence to that. And there's it's deeper than just going to a parlor to go get your tattoo. And to be clear, a lot of folks just go and show up and want to get tribal tattoos. So all of a sudden, I had a non-Indigenous guy show me his tribal tattoos, and I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at him. What do you say, Jolene?
Well, I'm practicing just like not saying things sometimes. So I just sort of I'm like, oh, okay. you know,
Right, to just
but
let it go.
yeah, just I don't have time to
Yeah,
actually,
that's right.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think the guy's already got it on his arm. What
Yeah,
are you gonna
what's the
do?
person
Like
gonna
go
say?
tell him to, you know, but each of these has a meaning. Every single one. These are all earth lines. So they all, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 earth lines. These are 5 different earth lines that are on my arm, and they each have a meaning. And so that would have been significant in many Indigenous practices. Yes, there were times that we used it for beauty as well. We have these really fun ones that we get on our thighs right here, and they're literally tattoos just for the babies.
Okay.
They're for when little
Not the
Inuit.
men.
They're not actually for the men, although I'm sure they enjoyed them as well.
Yes.
But they're for the children when they're born. Yeah, so that when a
okay.
baby is born, that's the
Yeah.
first thing that they see when they come into this world, is they see their mother's tattoos. How incredible is that? I get shivers when I think about that is why a woman got her tattoos on here, so that this baby, her child, sees their mother's tattoos.
Yeah.
That's special.
And we were especially curious about the stitching line too, because there's all these different methods. Will you say a little bit more about that? And
Okay. Yeah.
You know, you have the tattooing ceremony, but each one was significant to you in different ways.
Yeah. Well, the skin stitch one, although it does seem unassuming, it just seems like these little tiny lines on my arm. It was actually probably my second most significant one, next to my chin, is the top earth line here. And it was done, so Inuit primarily did skin stitch.
Yeah.
Which again, like attaching that to governance and how we sewed our clothes. Now we're sewing into our skin.
Yeah.
We're imprinting time immemorial into our skin. Yeah. And I have a video of it. It's quite phenomenal to see. So this is the same tattoo artist who did my very first hand poke tattoo. She got really well at doing skin stitch. And she actually takes the needle. So we use like sterilized needles. She makes bone needles, but we don't use them yet because we're just still not there yet. I don't know how our ancestors were doing this.
Yeah.
Like, our ancestors used like, I think charcoal to actually get that in. So I don't know how they did it. Like, we think about it. So she's actually made bone needles. Okay. They're beautiful to look at. So sometimes she'll bring them and we'll just have them set out, but we don't actually use them. She's very professional. She makes sure everything is sterile, everything's clean. She does it, and she did an amazing job. And so the needle goes in, and then she takes the ink with her pinky, and then she dips it in the ink, and then she puts it on my skin, and then as she pulls, so the thread goes through, and the thread grabs the ink and pulls the ink through. It's actually not the needle, it's the thread.
Clay and I were trying to describe it to Buddy.
It's incredible.
It is incredible.
And I've experienced people, their reactions to that, and that I don't really like when people sort of are just like grossed out almost by our practices, because I'm like, stay in your lane. This is a deeply personal, related to us. So sometimes we get that, and she's phenomenal. She actually did these. She actually did these the same day that she did this. So I said I requested hand poke of her because she did this in like 5 minutes. She's gotten really fast now. Yeah, she is phenomenal.
Okay, so link for me a little bit more how the tattooing and those ceremonies were linked to your healing. Like and I can see the relational aspect, the exchange of culture, to your ancestors, but just bring us through that.
Well, so at that time, I'd have been still struggling a great deal with identity. And being what it is to be Inuvialuk. And knowing that, gosh, none of my family has these tattoos. I'd heard my cousin say, we don't do that. It's against, God's wishes or whomever they were referring to. And so I was sort of dealing with that, still that discouragement of, don't do this. So I struggled a great deal, but I used to just draw it. So after I was drew it on my Barbies, I actually drew lines on my chin. When I'd go to a powwow, I'd usually put a line on just to represent, I'm Inuk.
You wanted the
Inuvialu
identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was attached to that,
Yeah.
but I was struggling with it. So after I got my tattoo, doing it, I struggled. I was afraid, actually. I struggled a fair bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I struggled. I think I was working through that identity. I also was not sober at that time.
Okay.
I was still drinking alcohol, and since then there's been a shift, and I've really settled into having face tattoos now, and I can't wait to see my girlfriend again. I'll get my cheeks done next. But I struggled with that, and almost feeling a bit of regret. And that was but there was something so deep about it that even though I struggled with regret a little bit, I still knew I had done the right thing.
Right.
I think I was getting social. I was experiencing some social situations that were making me feel, and I was being attached to things that had nothing to do with me.
Which is a common struggle.
Yeah.
Like you think you're when you get out in the world, your identity takes a whooping.
Yeah.
And you have this that is strengthening your identity. So it was like a stressor that brought you to another.
Yeah.
Now your identity is like an external, like committed.
Yes, that's commitment for sure.
It's
Getting
committed.
good. Yeah.
And what it also makes me think of, Jolene, is, in the field of psychology, when we're understanding this, our sense of identity creates a lot of resilience. So when I'm interacting with the teens, and that's one thing that's missing is strong identity. And so they are subject to the whims of society and their peers and their friends, and like a lack of resilience. So it really makes sense to me when you say this was a venture in identity, and then when you took that risk, it was risky, committed, and yet when you came through it, strengthening on the other side. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like it didn't take me too long to really step into it.
Okay.
But now more so than ever. Gosh, I feel like it's so just a part of who I am. I have close friends. I have one Dene girlfriend in the Dene. She's our neighboring territory, actually, the Satu Dene. She just said to me, she was like, it's like it was always there. When she saw, so she was actually receiving her first cultural tattoo when I was getting mine. That's also important to note, is that my girlfriend, who is Sate Dene, the day that I received my kakinit, she was receiving her first cultural tattoo as well.
And didn't you tattoo someone?
I did. So my tattoo artist actually requested me to tattoo her as a part of the exchange. It's important to note there are artists who like cold hard cash, and that's great. I mean, cash is never a bad thing.
It's their skill,
However, there are many artists, like my tattoo artists, just request a gift. So there's usually some sort of item exchange or whatever that may look like, food or blankets.
I'm struck by how beautiful it is. It's just a line on your chin.
Yeah.
And I come from I'll probably never have a tattoo. None of my people, my family are not much into tattoos. Although we had a funny incident where Nikita got a little obscure tattoo way under here, and she was terrified to tell her dad, and somehow it came out in the kitchen, and we she's a full grown 20 something at that time. We wrestled her down to catch it and tormented her and stuff like that. And so tattoos are so out of my family's experience, and I was just so struck at how beautiful it is, how fitting it is, as someone who that's not
Yeah.
And most tattoos I don't enjoy.
Yeah.
I have to say. I have friends who have quite a bit of tattoos, and I'm not drawn to them at all.
Well, there's a lot of people doing face tattoos these days that are a little crazy, like, you know, getting like writing on their face and that's fine for them if they want to do that. It's just for me, like
each his own, but...
yes, it has a cultural meaning. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to go do this. And so I understand what the next phase is for me, right? And it could be years. It might be years before I receive those, but I know. Yeah. So my cousin, who was a 60 scoop survivor, also got her kekinit, and we are, I believe, the first two in our family to receive them since they had been considered taboo by the missionaries. Yeah. So that is also a powerful statement, is that there's two of us now in our family who have them. And she went full on, and she got her forehead, her cheeks, and her chin done. So that's powerful, because she's older than me. She's a 60 scoop survivor, and she had survived a bout of cancer that almost took her life. So it seemed fitting to me that she'd have received, you know, almost like it's so beautiful
and I'm starting to really connect that. So culture as treatment, and the tattoos of coming back to your culture, the connection with others, the
kinship,
the kinship and the community, and it's almost like, in psychology terms, almost like attachment repair.
Oh,
when you think
totally.
Isn't it? When you think of that as a part of the scaffolding of our identity, is when there's been disruptions in attachment, attachment to your culture, attachment to your people, attachment to your, and that this is, I mean, probably could argue that's like an attachment repair. Yeah.
It's also distinct. So I've had a handful of Indigenous folks come to me. I've had actually some non-Indigenous folks come to me as well, asking me about how they go about getting theirs. So I'm very, so not all cultures did them. And I always remind my friends, like, you have to go and talk to your elders, or go to talk to people from your community and find out what kind of tattoos. You can get a cultural tattoo, but you don't have to do it on your face, or you don't have to. So it's gotten sometimes, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it's been bastardized. Yeah. Okay. So it's been appropriated. It's been just like culture and healing has, you know, that you always see sage and drumming, and you are seeing this, and dream catchers. Hard on dream catchers. But you see these items used in contemporary non-Indigenous people's healing, wherever their retreat or wherever that is. So these items, it doesn't sit well with me all the time, because it's like you take pieces of culture, but I believe that non-Indigenous peoples have legitimate obligations to the people whose lands they live on, and taking and culture but not giving anything back isn't one of them. So I always I always remind even my Indigenous friends that it's best to go and speak with your community. For Inuit, it's a fairly easy one. We are known to have face tattoos. The women are covered. So you would see these beautiful elders who have 8 lines or 10 lines covering almost their whole chin of lines. And then lines here, or dots, and more lines up here. So that's something that's important to me to note, is that it's not pan all across the board, not pan-Indianism. It is unique. Yes, there are other cultures like Tlingit, and there are other cultures who do that, but they know what their tattoos, where they are, who they're done by, and what they mean. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good.
Yes.
How are you doing for your energy level and your everything?
I'm doing okay, I'm doing okay, and I really appreciate you checking in. Actually, yeah. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay.
And what kind of energizes me in these, when I mentioned last time, if I can actually make a shift, it's really a big deal. But then also when you're talking and I'm making connections in my own mind of that, and I'm learning, I think that's energizing for me. If I'm not just listening, I'm kind of putting two and two together, and then you let me say it back, and you go you're getting, that's true, or that's You could say it that way.
I enjoy it because I don't get to talk about tattoos very much, believe it or not. So I love that we're talking about this. I often just don't think about it because I'm busy doing other things. I'm also in school, so I'm always, my attention's always elsewhere. So I love talking about tattoos because it's one of the easiest ways that I was able to connect to my culture. It was arguably, aside from maybe the social stuff, it was one of the easiest ways for me to reclaim identity and to say, no, this is who I am. And so now it actually distinguishes me. A lot of people are starting to understand, hey, the Inuit women had face tattoos. And so I immediately am now more attached to that group, which I love. I've been confused with all sorts of different cultures all my life, ever since I was a little girl, always being confused, people telling me who I am, people saying, oh, you're Métis, and I said, I'm not Métis though. And they would say, well, you're half white and you're half Indian, you're Métis. And I'm like, that's no. So I love that. And I love, because it's been for me, seamlessly easy to connect. So tattoos, I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing cultural tattoos. Yes. And so we actually invite, my boys got to come in and watch. So that's another beautiful part about it, is that we want people to come and watch. We want to see this, and just that sound, especially the hand poke, that tapping. That's what our ancestors heard. Those are the things. That's what you think about when you're getting these tattoos. When I got the skin stitch, immediately my mind went to a place of, like, that one hurt. That was the most painful tattoo that I received. Most of them didn't hurt, but the skin stitch, that hurt. But I felt it, and I was connected immediately to my ancestors that way.
I love that you do that level of explanation. And you also say, maybe don't ask about people's face tattoos in the grocery store. Yeah, right? So on the practical level. And that's important for me as an outsider. Yeah. And I think valuable for people to hear.
I prefer it when people just talk to me as if it's not there. Like, maybe not that it's not there, but they talk to me as if I am just a normal person,
rather than a distraction.
Although using it as the main center of conversation and singling it out, right? I will tell you what it means if I want to, and oftentimes I don't. That's for me. That's for me.
Yeah, it sure is. So if you're feeling good enough to keep chatting,
sure,
and and I'm rolling, and wasn't that coffee strong I made?
I loved it. It was good. I'm glad I only had a half a cup.
Yeah, Jolene was like, I only can have this much, but we made it count.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, thank you.
Just so enjoying this, and
well, can I say something really quick before we move on? Away from tattoos? It actually, when I went up to my homelands, that was another interesting thing, because I was finally in a place that was predominantly Inuvialuit.
Let's
too.
go into that. That's the second part of the
I saw an elder who had full tattoos.
Okay.
And she was grinning at me. She said hello, and that was powerful. That moment, I saw other women. I saw a lot of women who had face tattoos. So all of a sudden, I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I can see this resurgence happening up here, and I don't even have to be. I'm not even questioned in any sort of way about. Like I arrived. I arrived at my homelands. Yeah. I arrived where my family's from. And here you're seeing little tiny facets. There's not many, but there was a handful that I saw with full tattoos. And there was one elder. And you could tell she had fresh ink. Like the ink looked so beautiful on her aged, weathered, beautiful face. I could see these fresh ink. I was like, oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. So now I'm in this place. Now I've gotten to my homelands.